Well, welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. Hey, maybe you'll get to keep more of your money. How about that? Woohoo! And you can see if it's going to go to Washington for taxes. The president says, no, we want you to help get the economy growing again. We might actually see 3 or 4% growth. And I think many young people have never seen an economy that grows that fast.
Well, the White House is releasing the blueprint today for the president's plan. And now the administration and Congress will get to work on a final bill. Caitlin Burke has the story.
Massive tax cuts? Check. President Trump's tax plan expected to fulfill yet another campaign pledge. The president's guidelines are expected to focus on cutting tax rates on businesses from 35% to 15%, and cutting taxes plus increasing deductions for individuals.
The White House is also hoping to make the tax code much simpler and easier for individuals, even just sending in their taxes on a large postcard. And the administration says the cuts will lead to faster economic growth.
During President Obama's last year in office, the economy only grew 1.6%. President Trump is hoping for 3%. But many economists worry that Trump's tax cuts will result in higher budget deficits, something Republicans opposed under President Obama. Democrats are not likely to go along with Trump's tax cut, so the plan could have a difficult road in getting through Congress. Still, voters made it clear that the economy, jobs, and higher wages are a top issue for them, and the White House is working on just that. And Wall Street is still optimistic as the Trump rally is alive and well. The Nasdaq closed above 6,000 Tuesday for the first time ever. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Well, breaking news, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said it's going to be the largest tax cut and the largest reform in U.S. history. Well, if the Congress will leave it alone, it will be. Well, with us now is our good friend Steve Moore. He's the senior economic contributor for Freedom Works, and he's an advisor to the Trump campaign. Steve, it's great to see you back again on the show. Thank you.
Hi, Pat. Boy, I love that idea. My favorite element of this plan is that postcard return. You know, you see these dark circles under my eyes. Those are from filling out my taxes the last 6 days till 2 o'clock in the morning. Why does it have to be so complicated, Pat? I mean, why can't we have that postcard return? You know, how many kids do you have? How much money did you make? You pay a flat rate. Everybody pays their fair share. We've been waiting for 30 years for that, and I've been waiting for this day for a long time, so I am excited.
You know, I majored in tax law at law school, and I used to fill out my own taxes. I haven't filled taxes out in years. I don't understand what to say, and they jumped all over me. They said, well, stop trying to do that. We'll let Price Waterhouse do it. And so you don't have any idea what you're doing anymore. Well, look,
well, you know,
yes, go ahead.
You're right about that. Let me just add one thing, Pat. You know, one of the reasons we have to have such a gigantic IRS. Did you know there are over 50,000 people who work at the IRS, agents who are looking at every financial transaction you're making? If we keep the tax system simple, the IRS doesn't have to be looking over your shoulder in terms of every decision that you make. I think the American people have waited a long time for this. But you also made a good point at the outset of this that, you know, a lot of young people have never seen 3% growth, and 3% growth isn't even that great. I mean, you know, under the Reagan years, you remember this, we had quarters and years where we had 5, 6, 7, 8% growth. That's what we should be striving for in this country. It'll solve so many of our problems.
All right, that Congressional Budget Office, they just have nothing but, you know, gloom and doom, and the glass is always half empty, always with them. Well, look, we've got this enormous debt. We're talking about servicing the debt. You have pointed out very cogently that if we have the growth, the debt can take care of itself. Tell us about how that works.
Well, just that, you know, if we keep growing at less than 2%, as your report just indicated, we're never going to get to a balanced budget. You just don't have enough people working. You don't have companies profitable. You don't have the startups that make America great. We've got to get this economic growth rate up. If we just go to 3% growth, and that's not shooting for the moon, Pat. You know, that's actually less than we've grown historically. But if we just get up to 3%, the debt burden will start to reduce. If we keep growing at less than 2%, we're going to see rising debt. We're going to look like Greece and Puerto Rico pretty soon. So these stakes are very high. The centerpiece of the Donald Trump plan, which is something I worked on a year ago with Donald Trump, and he hasn't wavered from this, and that's fantastic. Get the business tax rates down. We're the highest in the world. My goodness, you saw what happened in the elections with France. Even France wants to cut their business taxes. Sweden, Russia, we have a higher tax rate in the United States. I mean, this is not a laughing matter, actually. We have a higher tax rate than Russia, Sweden, France, Germany, Japan. How can we compete in that kind of world?
Well, now, are we talking now about a quick fix cutting rates, or are we talking about an overhaul of the overall tax code?
Both.
You
Yeah,
think
now I think what's going to come first, Pat, and we'll find out later about exactly what the plan is going to entail, but the centerpiece of the plan will be cutting those rates. But Donald Trump and Steve Mnuchin have been talking a lot about that postcard return, vastly simplifying the tax system. Everybody in the country except tax accountants loves that idea.
Well, you know, there's a special interest group for almost every cutout in that entire code, and they're going to be lobbying like crazy. How are they going to get it through Congress?
It's not easy. It is not easy. You're exactly right. I mean, you know, on K Street, down the street from where I'm sitting right now, there are hordes and hordes, hornets' nests of special interests that are going to fight this. So I'm not saying this is going to be easy, Pat. We need the people to tell Congress, get this done, because, you know, every special interest group is whispering into Congress's ear, you know, keep the deduction for this and that, and Bullsperm and windmills and all, you know, NASCAR racetracks and all this stuff. You wonder how this stuff ever got in the tax code in the first place.
You're looking at 15% corporate rate, cutting that, and the individual rate will go to what? 25, 20%?
Probably closer to, for the high-income people, probably somewhere around 33%. For middle-class people, probably closer to 20.
20 for the middle class.
I forgot something that's really important, Pat. Sorry to interrupt, but this is really important. I forgot to say this. Every small business in America is going to get a tax cut. You know this. There are 26.5 million small businesses in this country. Every one of those is going to see a reduction in their taxes. And this is not that complicated, right, Pat? If the small businessmen and women in this country have more money after they, you know, at the end of the year, they can plow that more money back into the business, expand the business, hire more workers. I don't understand why liberals don't get this.
Well, these guys are so-called S-corp, or are they corporations? S-corps. They're individual.
Yeah, but I just call them small businesses. They're just small businesses that don't pay the corporate tax rate, and they're paying tax rates, Pat, as high as 40%. And if you're in a high-tax state, sometimes 50%, sometimes half of the money a small businessman and woman earns goes to the government. Let
me ask you about some deductions. You mentioned state tax. We get to deduct that now. You've got gifts, charitable donations, and then you've got mortgage interest. What's going to happen to those three things?
Well, that's yet to be decided. One of the things I like about the Trump plan is it increases what's called the standard deduction. So you just check the box for standard deduction, and that means for the vast, vast majority of Americans, they're not going to have to keep the shoeboxes of return, receipts and all of this stuff to get this deduction and that deduction. Just to have a standard deduction, everybody takes it, and then these issues about, well, the mortgage deduction, the charitable deduction, that all goes away, and you vastly simplify the system. That's how we get this down to a postcard.
All right. Can they get this thing through this year, you think? I mean, yes?
We got to, Pat. The economy, look at what happened with the economy back after the election day. Remember, I think I was on your show the day after the election. Remember, the economy and the stock market just boomed in the excitement of this new pro-business president. And we had a very strong November, December, January, February. And then in about mid-March, about a month ago, the economy started to flatten out a little bit. The stock market started to falter. And the reason was people were getting nervous about this tax cut not happening. And businesses are ready for this. They want it. They want to expand. So my advice to Congress, get going on this. It's taking too long. You remember this, in August of 1981, 8 months after Reagan was elected, you remember that famous day in Santa Barbara when he signed that tax cut. And why should it take longer for Donald Trump? So I want a tax cut signed into law by August of this year, retroactive, Pat, to April 15, 2017.
From your lips to Congress's ears, Steve, thank you very much.
I hope we get it done. Take care.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you right now, this is very important for our country. It's very important for the long-range prosperity of our nation and our youth. And we shouldn't be fighting, partisanship on this one. It ought to be a bipartisan effort, and it'll be good for everybody. And I think it's time you get hold of your congressman, let them know you're in favor of tax reform, and it's got to be done now. They can't delay on this thing. There's no reason to. But there will be so, as we mentioned with Steve, there are so many special interests who have carved out. That tax code is a monstrosity. You remember Jimmy Carter years ago said it was an old Southern statement, but he put it out in his speech. He said it's a disgrace to the human race. You remember that? Everybody said, oh, yeah, the president said that. Well, he's a Democrat, and he was right. Republicans said the same thing. But it's got to be fixed. And so you got taxes and you've got reform of Obamacare. If he can get those things through, it will dramatically transform this nation's economic prosperity. And it's something that needs to be worked on. So, Wendy, are you going to write your congressman?
Well, there will be much rejoicing in the land if this all happens, as you say.
You better sweet believe it. All right.